My name is Jenny. I'm a 27-year-old nurse and currently pregnant. There's still time before my maternity leave, so I'm working hard despite feeling exhausted. My husband, Trace, is 35 and works as a clerk in the same hospital. Our first encounter was when he approached me during a break at work. He's a gentleman, always offering kind words when I'm worn out from night shifts. Gradually, we were drawn to each other and started dating. Not long after, we began living together. Although he's older, Trace looks younger than his age. I used to mind the age difference, but it quickly ceased to bother me. When we talk, I never feel the age gap, which makes it very comfortable. 2 years into our relationship, we discovered I was pregnant, leading to our marriage. The sequence may seem unusual, but I'm happy to be expecting a child with the man I love. We occasionally visit my parents' home. Since our apartment is close to my childhood home, we often dine together. Dinner with my parents and us is enjoyable, but there's something that concerns me. That concern is my younger sister, Daniela. Daniela, 1 year my junior at 26, works in the apparel industry, seemingly part-time. Her earnings are too modest for living alone to be practical. Thus, she still resides at our parents' home. I don't mind her being there, but her behavior is troubling. You're here again. Whenever we visit, she's almost always home. It's curious how often she's there, considering she's supposed to be working. Welcome, brother-in-law. Before speaking to me, she invariably greets my husband first.
Hello.
She interacts with him a little too closely for comfort. Even if they're now family, it's not how one should behave with their sister's husband. Hey, that's too close. He might not like it, so stop. Despite my warnings, Daniela doesn't back off. Come on, we're family. It's fine. She ignores me and pulls my husband into the house by his arm. It's irritating that he doesn't seem entirely displeased. I wish he'd push her away, considering his pregnant wife. But led by my sister, he just goes along. Welcome back. Hungry, right? Shall we go out for dinner? I'll come too. Whenever we plan to eat out, she insists on joining us. I'd like to have some time to discuss the future, but Daniela lacks such consideration.
Daniela, come with us.
It disappoints me that my husband encourages her. We're having a child and planning a wedding, yet we haven't discussed the ceremony. Ideally, we'd marry before my belly grows too big, but the delay is causing me stress. If only Daniela could be a bit more thoughtful. Seeing my husband and sister chatting amicably makes me feel lonely. Later, when I'm on night duty, my husband began going out. Off to work, then. Are you going somewhere?
Going out for dinner.
There's a certain coldness to his responses lately, compared to before. Meals have become solitary events at home, probably because he's bored. I decided not to probe any further. However, my husband's behavior has started to feel distinctly off. Could you please not look at your mobile phone during meals? Lately, he never seems to let go of his mobile phone. It's a noticeable change since he wasn't much into his phone before. He angles the screen away from me and hides it whenever I walk by. Watching him engrossed in his phone, I've grown suspicious. One day, amidst my growing disgust, I was working while he had the day off. After finishing my shift, I thought of picking up some sweets for us and took a different route home. That's when I spotted a familiar figure. Is that Daniela? It was my sister, on a path she doesn't normally take. Curious why she was there, I was about to call out to her when...
Sorry to keep you waiting.
She was looking in the direction of a familiar voice, and I instinctively hid. Geez, I've been waiting. It was my husband she was meeting up with. They walked hand in hand like a couple into a nearby restaurant. Shocked, I was frozen in place for a while, sweating profusely and unable to comprehend what was happening. From that day, I was determined to peek inside the mobile phone he was so intently focused on. But he was always carrying it, making it a difficult feat. so I played the part of a devoted wife to the hilt. Welcome home.
Back, huh? Dinner's unusually fancy tonight.
I laid out a feast I had painstakingly prepared. Once the baby's here, it'll be harder to have these quiet dinners, right? So I thought we should cherish our time together while we can. I arranged his favorite dishes and included wine and whiskey.
Right? The food looks really delicious.
He was in a good mood, drinking more quickly than usual. Once I confirmed he was fast asleep and snoring, I made my move to check his phone. It was troublesome to prepare various dishes and drinks, but it was a surefire way to look at his phone. There wasn't a password before, but now he had set one. I racked my brain and tried every pen I could think of. Then, my sister's birthday. A 4-digit number came to mind. No way. My hand shaking, I typed it in. And to my dismay, the phone unlocked. Realizing the truth about my husband and sister, I was overwhelmed with anger. I wanted to wake him up and confront him right then and there. But I restrained myself, focusing instead on gathering evidence. There it is. This is it. Reading the text, the conversation between my husband and sister was unbearable. Today was fun. Can't wait to see you again soon.
I feel the same. I can't wait to hold you.
Me too. I want a big hug. Next time, shall we go there?
Yeah, I'd like that. How about the place in front of the station?
Sounds great. Let's definitely go to a hotel next week. It seems that my husband and sister haven't actually committed adultery yet. A meal might be considered cheating enough, but it could be dismissed too easily. I was set on punishing my husband thoroughly for meeting up with my sister behind his pregnant wife's back. Now that I knew their plans to go to a hotel, I could stop them. But I chose not to. I no longer loved a husband with such scant regard for becoming a father. On the day my husband and sister were to meet, I was at work, but took some time off to follow them. My growing belly made it risky to be spotted. Despite the stress and physical toll of tailing them, I was determined not to give up until I had solid evidence. Just like the text said, they met at the station and went straight to a hotel. I hurriedly captured photos, and also took a video just to be sure. After completing my task, I returned to work and resumed my duties as if nothing had happened. The stress caused contractions, and I had to start taking medication. It felt wrong to put my unborn child through this, but I kept my spirits up. The days of getting my husband drunk to check his phone continued. Their hotel visit seemed to have dissolved any remaining restraint they had. On days I worked and he was off, they made plans to go to a hotel with high frequency. The thought of 2 adults exchanging embarrassingly intimate texts made me nauseous. Yet I diligently photographed these messages with my phone to keep as evidence. Filled with a sense of futility, I carried on with the task. It's been 2 months since my husband and sister started their affair. I've confirmed 10 hotel visits.
Going out for drinks with friends today. Can't do it once the baby comes, so I want to meet up while I can.
Sure, have fun. Lately, he's been using the transparent lie of drinks with friends to meet my sister. Feeling the limits of following them, with my now noticeable pregnancy, it's about time to move to the next phase of my plan. With 6 weeks until my due date, I've started my maternity leave. Now that I have more time at home while my husband is at work, I can move freely.
You should rest at home. It's not long until the birth.
Thanks, I will. But instead of resting, I've been busy because of my husband. I hid my plans from him as best as I could, filled with irritation. When he left for work, I decided to go to my parents' house to report everything. As usual, my sister was there. Your belly's gotten so big, it must be tough. Just over a month until the birth. It's heavy and a bit difficult. It's gotten so big, it doesn't even look like a woman's body. She seemed utterly clueless about me knowing about her deeds. Perhaps she was reveling in the superiority of sleeping with her brother-in-law. I felt nothing upon hearing my sister's snide remarks. I actually have something to talk about. I called my parents and sister into the living room and began talking about my husband and sister's affair. Simply put, Daniela and Trace are having an affair, so I'm planning to sue for compensation in the divorce proceedings. As I said this, all three were visibly shaken. An affair? Yes, an affair between my husband and Daniela.
What do you mean?
My parents were flustered while my sister desperately made excuses. What? Just because you're not getting attention from your husband with that big belly, don't blame me. My sister's loud, sweating figure was almost comical. Sure, we met up after work for a meal, but that's not cheating, right? You're too narrow-minded to label that as infidelity. Ignoring my sister's outburst, I showed the mobile phone screen to the three of them. If there had been a hint of an apology, it might have been different. Here, this is the evidence. I displayed the photos and videos of my sister and husband entering the hotel. My sister, who had ridiculed me, froze with shock at the sight. Upon comparing the evidence photos with my sister, my parents were outraged by this unimaginable scenario. Mom, reaching her boiling point, glared at my sister with a coldness I'd never seen before. Overwhelmed by the pressure, my sister pleaded, Mom, listen! What on earth have you done? I just went along because he wanted to meet. I'm the victim here. I was disgusted by my sister's self-centeredness. I also showed the text where my sister and husband first made the hotel arrangement. Looking at this, it clearly seems like Daniela was the one inviting. Don't think you can get away by blaming others. My sister, unable to find words, just trembled with clenched fists. I'll be claiming a hefty compensation in the divorce case later. Reflect on what you've done. Oh, and by the way, you can have that man once I divorce him. I declared my intention to leave the family home. My sister broke down crying. It was pathetic to cry over her own misdeeds. Hey, Mom, listen. Jenny, I'll drive you home. Let's forget about that fool.
I'm worried, so I'll go too.
Without a second glance at my sobbing sister, I got into Dad's car, but then an idea struck me. Oh, right. I have somewhere I want to take Daniela. After I explained to my parents, they both nodded. We took my sister and drove off. We were heading straight to my husband's parents' house. Father-in-law and mother-in-law said they wanted to give us an early baby gift. Can you come straight to your in-laws after work?
I can.
I had lied to my husband, calling him to his parents' home.
I'm back. Is Jenny here?
Upon arriving at his parents', my husband was surprised to find the whole family gathered.
Sit down.
Yes? He glanced at Daniela's pale face and must have understood everything, trembling and meekly taking a seat. Without any concern for my cowering husband, I presented the evidence of his affair just as I had at my parents' house. He glanced briefly at the evidence before quickly looking away, seemingly uncomfortable. Then he mumbled a feeble excuse.
We just had tea at the hotel.
You disgrace! Doing such foolish things when your wife is about to give birth.
I'm sorry.
Father-in-law and mother-in-law, who were very decent people, offered a profound apology for my husband's thoughtless actions. Since father-in-law and mother-in-law are not at fault, I have no intention of holding them responsible. I said to my husband and sister with a smile, It's okay, don't worry about it. Just a little affair. I'll be claiming $200,000 in alimony during the divorce, so it's fine.
My
husband and sister were stunned by the amount of money. You don't have to solve this with money, but please feel free to claim as much as you want in the divorce settlement. I prefer he pays for it, so please don't assist him.
We won't give any assistance. We never want to see him again.
Then my parents also said,
We'll make our daughter pay half. Let them take on debt and pay the divorce settlement. Daniela, you won't see us again. We will not support you.
So unfair. My sister and husband were quickly disowned by their parents. Seeing their desperate faces, knowing they faced a heavy divorce settlement, gave me a sense of relief. In fact, I had been shouldering my husband's debts. He had accumulated $50,000 in gambling debts, most of which I had repaid. He could erase his debts thanks to me. and I, lovingly, had willingly paid. Looking back, I regret it all. But then, I thought of claiming not only the divorce settlement and child support, but also the money I paid for his debts. That total would come to $200,000. I found the idea of $200,000 far more appealing than a cheating husband. The thought of the money made me excited rather than sad about the divorce. After that, I never returned to the apartment I shared with my husband. My debt-ridden ex and sister moved into a cheaper apartment immediately. I went back to my parents' home to spend the rest of my pregnancy in peace. My sister never apologized until the end, but my husband must have realized his foolishness. He called me repeatedly after I returned to my parents' house. Annoyed, I answered the phone, just once. "What?"
"I'm sorry. I won't cheat again. Please drop the divorce and claim for alimony."
"I won't stop, no matter how much you regret it. I can't love or meet a man who slept with his sister-in-law again. If you don't agree to the divorce and alimony, I'll consult with your workplace."
"Please don't do that."
"Well, just follow whatever the lawyer says. I'm busy with childbirth, so don't contact me again."
"Wait, if it stays like this, everyone at work will know about the divorce."
"If you agree to the divorce and pay the alimony, I might as well quit my job. Think carefully about your future." With that, I hung up. I consulted with a lawyer and filed for divorce and a claim for alimony. My husband, well regarded at work, immediately agreed to the divorce and the payment of the claimed $200,000. My ex-husband and sister moved to a cheaper apartment filled with debts. With nowhere else to go and no one else to rely on, they had to support each other. My ex-husband did part-time day jobs on his days off to pay off debts and lived barely making ends meet. My sister quit her part-time job in the apparel industry and now works in the nightlife industry. My ex-husband still wears his wedding ring, pretending at work that he isn't divorced.
"People say your husband talks happily about the baby being born."
Yeah. I agreed to the conversation with my colleague nonchalantly, as I had to get the alimony. If he was so keen on maintaining his facade, he shouldn't have cheated. I don't care if he continues to lie in the future. As for me, I gave birth to a healthy boy on the due date. He looks just like me. The overwhelming love made me cry. Without a father, I resolved to raise him well on my own. I'm so sorry. There's nothing I can do about it. Right now, sister-in-law is standing before me, offering a heartfelt apology. How did this all happen? Well, the story goes back about a week. My name is Clara. My husband runs a hot dog stand. His name is Osmond. We met at the hot dog stand my husband used to run. He owned a small hot dog stand near the train station right on my way home from work. I would get hungry after work and often buy a hot dog there. He initiated a conversation and we started dating. After a few years of dating, we got married. The first time I met sister-in-law, who is now apologizing deeply in front of me, was at a family meeting. "Nice to meet you. I'm dating your brother. Please treat me well." "Nice to meet you. I'm not perfect. But I'm sister, so please be kind." At that time, I thought a nice person had come into our lives. Brother runs a reasonably large company, and sister-in-law is the one who supported him, so he said. He spoke highly of her, calling her a solid and good wife. But a few years after brother got married, sister-in-law's true nature began to show. Every time she came to visit her parents' house, she had more designer items, and her social media was filled with photos of luxury hotel lunches with friends and designer cosmetics. We let go as long as it didn't affect us, but eventually sister-in-law began to demand persistent comments. "Sister-in-law, why don't you comment on my social media?" "I only browse." "Don't you have any pictures to post?" "No, I use social media to gather information and look at others' posts." "Wouldn't it be nice to comment once in a while?" Maybe, if I feel like it. Please comment at least once. I'm not doing it just because you tell me to. I was annoyed with her constant requests for comments, so I started ignoring her for a while. Then she said in a small voice, "You're such a buzzkill. Boring." From that moment on, I decided to avoid sister-in-law more than necessary. I wanted her to understand that I wasn't the type to get overly friendly, but she was thick-skinned and kept asking for comments several times afterward. Ignoring her each time, she finally gave up on the comments. Since we rarely met, I thought I could spend my time comfortably, but whenever I went back to my parents' house, our schedules would coincide, making me feel depressed every time. It happened again during my recent visit home. "Sister-in-law, what do you think of this bag?" "It's cute, isn't it?" "It's a brand new collection." "I'm not interested in that sort of thing." "Come on now, every girl loves brand name bags, don't they?" I genuinely had no interest in brands or expensive accessories, but it seemed to have struck a nerve with her that I wasn't envious. She said, "You don't have to pretend. If you're jealous, just admit it. I can even give you my old one." I was actually disinterested and annoyed, so I replied, "I really have no interest. Besides, I think those things are best left to those who like them." "What's your problem? Stop being so stubborn." She snapped and left without waiting for my brother to return. When my brother got home, I protested because I thought her behavior was too much. "Hey, can you do something about your wife?"
What happened?
She made a comment that clearly looked down on me earlier, and it made me really uncomfortable.
What do you mean?
I told him all about her constant nagging for compliments, and her condescending remarks like offering to give me her old things.
Recently, she's been treated like a CEO's wife by her housewife friends, and I think it's gotten to her head. I'll have a firm talk with her too, but I'd like you to handle it smoothly.
I don't want to fight either, but I don't feel like we can be friends. Just remember to keep our relationship to that of relatives.
I understand. Sorry for the trouble.
I want to say it's not your fault, but she's your wife. Just remember that it affects your reputation.
I understand.
After that, we lived peacefully without meeting. There were a few occasions, like weddings or funerals, when we had to meet. Every time I kept my distance, and she seemed to understand, which made me feel relieved. However, during the greetings for my wedding, I was reminded that people don't really change. When my husband and I were getting married, we had a family introduction dinner with my brother and sister-in-law, my parents and my husband's parents. Even sister-in-law, I thought, would not say anything inappropriate in such a setting, but she messed up. By the way, what kind of work do you do?
I run a humble hot dog stand.
Oh, really? A chain?
No, it's an independent shop.
A hot dog stand? That's not even part-time work.
Hey, come on.
But it's a hot dog stand, right? Even if you were the manager of a chain store, it's still just okay. At that point, brother was pale, and our parents were staring at sister-in-law with disbelief. Are you going home now?
Yes, I'm heading home.
Aw, come on. I wanted to hear more about the hot dogs. I was furious at sister-in-law's mocking tone. Look, I've been wanting to say this for a while. Can you please stop making fun of people in the way you speak? I'm not doing that. Yes, you are. You're overthinking it. But it seems I'm intruding, so I'll make my exit now. With that, she clicked her heels and left.
but I kept glaring at sister-in-law. I'm sorry. I apologize. She wasn't always like this. It's fine. I know my job is easy to make fun of, so I'm okay with it. I'm truly sorry. After that, there was a brief bout of apologies, but the meal without Brother's family ended in a harmonious atmosphere. Even after the meal, I kept apologizing to my husband, but he seemed unfazed by his easygoing personality. When I went to Brother's house alone to hand over the wedding invitations, sister-in-law said, "Oh, a hot dog vendor, but you're holding it in such a big venue." What does being a hot dog vendor have to do with it? Can you afford a dress change? If you have complaints, don't come. I don't mind going, but really? She said, her tone mocking throughout. If this attitude continued, I was ready to tell both of them that they didn't have to come to the ceremony. But there were certain circumstances with Brother, so I allowed them to attend on the condition that sister-in-law absolutely wouldn't approach me. And then the wedding day arrived. The wedding day was held in a relatively large venue. During the ceremony, sister-in-law was well behaved, either due to having some sense of decency or because Brother had scolded her. The ceremony ended without a hitch. The reception was mostly over, and we were in the midst of casual conversation when the incident happened. As a crowd gathered around the bride and groom's seats, a drunken sister-in-law approached. She gulped down the champagne in her hand and loudly proclaimed, "A hot dog vendor's wife is headed straight for a low-life existence, isn't she?" The room went dead silent at her words. Sister-in-law, oblivious to the recoiling of those around her, continued to disparage my husband. Then, from a little distance where he was chatting, Brother flew over and yelled, "You! What are you saying?" But it's true, isn't it? Being a hot dog vendor's wife is pretty low, right? She spent her life filthy in front of the kitchen. That's how it feels. You just shut up. Why are you defending her? It's the truth, isn't it? At that moment, my husband stood up and said, "You. It's over." What? Right then and there, Brother turned to those around and offered a heartfelt apology. My wife is really very sorry. No, I understand your family's way of thinking well enough. What? What is it? What's going on? Listen, the guests at this venue are people who have invested in Brother's company or are business partners. What? What have you done? But why? Why would a hot dog stand owner invite such people? They're not your customers. Osmond, you see, runs the hot dog stand as a hobby. He's an investor, far wealthier than us, and holds a much higher position. He's been investing in my company and even made contracts because my sister was getting married. You've ruined everything. No way. Yes, my husband's true identity is that of an investor. He found success at a young age and started a hot dog stand as a hobby while continuing his investments. However, he mostly entrusts others with the work. He has a large network, but lives modestly, without any extravagant lifestyle. I was surprised when I found out he was an investor, but I admired his attitude of being wealthy yet living modestly, and only spending money on what's really needed, which led me to marry him. After that, Brother took sister-in-law away, and the event ended early, blaming a sudden illness in the bride's family. Of course, any after-parties were cancelled. Sister-in-law was summoned to a family meeting. The result was the apology at the beginning. As a result of the family meeting, it was the majority opinion that future dealing should be avoided if sister-in-law is around. Although they acknowledge brother's work, they think that trouble will eventually rise if sister-in-law is present. I agree with that. After all, it did become a big issue.
Please forgive me. I apologize.
I want to protect the company, and I can't go on with you. Divorce.
You can ruin someone's wedding and still ask for forgiveness? Impossible.
If you're here, I can never enter this house again. Divorce.
I can't either. I can't associate with someone who thinks like that. The family's opinion was consistent. If sister-in-law is involved, it's impossible. If anyone had taken her side, they would have had to think about the future, but fortunately everyone agreed. The compensation will be offset by the cancellation fees for the after-party and the post-party, as well as the return of the gifts. Your family has been notified. Pack up and leave by this weekend. What? Why do we have to pay for that?
Of course you have to. We couldn't hold the after-party or the post-party, and we had to return the gifts because you ruined the wedding. We're all business owners, so the amount of money is significant. If you don't believe it, look at the recorded amount.
Indeed, the amount returned was quite large. First, most of the attendees were business owners, and since many of them had invested in the husband's company, many were generous with their gifts. The total amount came to about $50,000. Honestly, I thought if we had this money, we could completely offset the wedding costs, but that's the secret. Sister-in-law was breaking down in tears after seeing the recorded amount, but it was none of my concern. You should have behaved yourself. But I didn't know. You shouldn't look down on people just because you didn't know, and you shouldn't judge people by their profession. But you said you were a hot dog vendor. I didn't say anything wrong. I was going to explain later, but you're the one who made a fuss. You didn't even tell me about the people at the venue. You were planning to be mean from the start. If you were truly involved in Brother's work, you'd certainly recognize those faces. No need to tell you. Besides, if you were really friends with me, you'd know who was coming and what positions they hold. Yes, she only supported Brother at first. After that, she seemed to focus on having lunches, dinners, practice sessions, and fun with the president's wives. So she didn't know the faces of Brother's business partners, nor did she know about her relationship with her husband. She didn't even know what kind of work Brother was doing now. If she had been working with Brother, she should have known who the business partners were, and normally, she should have supported him as an entrepreneur's wife. But sister-in-law said, I'll work hard on my relationships with women. So you work hard at your job. Entertaining the president's wives is part of the job. And she didn't seem to listen. Though he tried to tell her several times, sister-in-law maintained an attitude of, I'm doing my best on my own. And it seemed like Brother had given up. You're the one who cut off the friendship. I don't like your snide remarks. They belittle me. Besides, you don't normally say things to diminish the groom at someone's wedding. You keep it to a greeting. Wah! Wah! Sister-in-law was sobbing like a child, but it had nothing to do with me. Sorry. But can you take her away quickly? She's noisy.
I apologize, but my daughter's parents are coming here to pick her up today.
What's that? You never intended to forgive her in the first place?
Of course not, because I'm turning a blind eye to your overspending, so be grateful. Or shall I charge you the $80,000 for the overspending? It won't be offset.
Inwardly, I thought, so, she overspent beyond our means, huh? But I felt a little lighter knowing I didn't have to deal with sister-in-law anymore.
After a while, sister-in-law's parents arrived and tried to apologize deeply at the entrance, but I said, I don't need that, and I don't intend to forgive her. Can you please take her back quickly? Sister-in-law's parents simply said, We're sorry, and took sister-in-law away. Later, I received a DM from sister-in-law on social media. I'll never forgive you for stealing my glamorous life as a CEO's wife. You're rich, so pay me $100,000 as compensation for ruining my life. Or let me meet brother and tell him that I've forgiven him. So we should remarry. I'll forgive you for ruining my life if you do that. And send me gifts for the birthdays and anniversaries you've missed. I'll forgive you if you send me some of the latest designer bags. The DM read. I quietly forwarded it to brother. From what I heard, sister-in-law seems to be living alone in a small apartment, having even been kicked out of her family home. Apparently, after the divorce, she'd written something like a contract stating that if she ever tried to contact me or brother, she would have to pay a used-up fee, and since she broke that agreement, sister-in-law received a bill for $8 million. Sister-in-law tried to get her parents to pay, but sister-in-law's parents were a typical middle-class family. Even though she's their only daughter, it was not an amount they could casually pay. As a result, they told her to pay it on her own, and that they knew nothing about it, and she was driven out of her family home, now persuaded by brother for repayment. For a while, I kept an eye on sister-in-law's account, but whether she ran out of photos or her friends found out about the divorce, sister-in-law's social media account was gone before I knew it. As for me, I'm working happily with my husband. The work is tough since it's a new job, but chatting with my husband's investment clients and students after school makes it enjoyable. Since my husband isn't fond of luxury, we live a modest life together. The other day I thought I saw sister-in-law. She looked completely different from her once neat appearance, wearing saggy old sweatpants and cheap slippers, carrying shopping bags. I thought, if only she had listened to what people told her, this wouldn't have happened. But I decided it was a waste of time to feel sorry for her, and stopped thinking about it.
My name is Mary, and I'm 45 years old. I live with my husband Richard, who is the same age as me. We met in college and started dating soon after. My first impression of Richard was that he was serious and honest. Though he was a man of few words, he really cared about his family. I was drawn to Richard's kindness and knew I wanted to spend my life with him. It turns out, Richard felt the same way. We even promised to marry each other while still in college. Though some might call it young love, we continued dating even after graduating. After starting our careers, we felt the same about each other and decided to get married. To our delight, we had a child shortly after getting married. Our daughter Sarah, who is turning 21 this year, graduated from vocational school and has started working. Sarah's workplace is close enough to commute from home, but she wanted to live on her own. So she's now living alone not far from her workplace. With Sarah moved out, Richard and I have been enjoying life, just the two of us, for the first time in a while. Life was pretty good, but there was one thing that bothered us. It was the presence of my sister-in-law, Susan. Susan, who is 38, divorced William last year after being married to him for 15 years. The reason for their divorce was Susan's infidelity. Susan may look like an average woman, but she has a weakness for men. It seems she had cheated on William multiple times over their 15-year marriage. William had seemingly turned a blind eye to Susan's cheating, but her actions escalated and he couldn't bear it anymore. He had been collecting evidence of her affairs. With this evidence, William confronted Susan with divorce papers. Through lawyers, Susan didn't have a chance. William even demanded a large sum of alimony from Susan's lover David, and that led to the divorce. But what surprised me the most was what happened next. Unbelievably, Susan decided to remarry, this time with David. We found out about Susan's remarriage when we received the wedding invitation. I knew about Susan's infidelity and it was messing with my head. Susan, are you really going through with this wedding? Everyone knows you are remarrying David. You sure about that?
Susan is trying to make a fresh start. We should be happy for her.
Richard has always doted on Susan, so he thinks her remarrying David is cause for celebration. What about William, who got cheated on? Poor guy. And Susan has even more issues to deal with, issues that will later come crashing down on me.
Hello, Susan?
One day, Richard gets a call. It's Susan.
Yeah, what? Are you okay? We can't tell what's going on over the phone. Come over now.
Richard sounded frantic over the phone after hanging up. He looked deeply concerned.
Susan was crying on the phone. She seemed too distraught to explain, so I invited her over. Mary, I would like you to be there too.
Richard's serious expression told me this wasn't something to take lightly. Got it. What could be happening? I felt uneasy, wondering what could have happened to Susan, who is supposed to be getting married in 2 months. About an hour after hanging up, Susan arrives at our place sweating bullets. You could tell she was really stressed out. Welcome, come on in. Richard, Mary, help me. As soon as she enters the house, it's clear that Susan is panicking.
Hey, calm down.
Richard sees the frantic Susan on the sofa and offers her some coffee. Susan gulps down the coffee and lets out a deep sigh, trying to calm herself. What's got you so worked up? As I look into Susan's face, she starts to break down in tears. Seeing this, Richard is shocked and rushes to console her.
It's okay. Can you tell us what is going on?
Yeah, okay. After shedding some tears, Susan drinks another cup of coffee before she starts talking. The thing is, I need your advice about the upcoming wedding.
Wait, are you canceling the wedding? Why on earth would you do that?
Richard interrupts. No, that's not it. Well, it's not it. I mean, what are you trying to say? It seems like Susan is trying to figure out how to explain. She hangs her head and remains silent for a while.
You have to tell us, or we can't help. If there's something we can do, we will.
Encouraged by Richard, Susan finally speaks. The truth is, I may not be able to afford the wedding and the honeymoon. What? All that panic and she's worried about money? I'm standing there flabbergasted when Richard turns to Susan.
So, let me get this straight. You're saying the wedding and the trip might be off because you can't secure the funds?
Yeah.
You work, don't you, Susan? And doesn't David have any savings?
It's not that we don't have any. It's just that we spent it all on our divorces. We had to pay William alimony, so we can't afford to pay for the wedding or the trip. I am at a loss for words, incredulous that Susan would speak so casually about such a foolish decision.
So, the point of discussion is?
Oh, we were hoping to borrow the money for the wedding and the trip from you too. Richard listens to Susan and furrows his brow. Clearly, he finds this whole situation ridiculous as well. After a sigh, he speaks.
Oh, is that all? Well, we have some savings. We can lend you that much.
What? You're lending it to them? My head starts to spin. What is he talking about?
Of course, it would be heartless to refuse Susan, right? You don't have to pay us back.
He continues.
Mary, you said you have been saving for our parents' care, right? We can lend them the money from that.
Richard proposes to lend the money from my savings, not his. I can't believe what I'm hearing. No, that money is for my parents. I can't just give it away. I can't believe this. Susan breaks down, crying again. Richard rushes to comfort her. What's with this kid?
What's wrong with you not helping Susan in a time like this? How much do you need, Susan?
It's $30,000 total. What? $30,000? My parents are already over 75. Though they're still healthy, they will need care soon. Being an only child, I've been saving for this purpose. Even after having children, I never quit my job and have saved up money alongside educational funds. I have no desire to use this money for Susan.
We'll be using Mary's $30,000 saving for Susan's wedding and honeymoon.
I told you, that money's for my parents' care. As I continue to adamantly refuse, Richard finally loses his temper.
Not helping Susan is crazy. Those who have should give.
Then why don't you give it?
I bought this house. I don't have savings.
The house was bought with both our salaries and on a mortgage. That's no reason.
What about Sarah's educational expenses?
We split that too, and by the way, we have split all living expenses so far. Did you forget? At a loss for words, Richard clenches his fist. His face beat red. I suddenly realized that Richard hadn't been saving any money at all. We had been keeping our finances separate since we got married, so I had no idea.
Just give me the money, no questions asked. If you don't get it, then forget it.
Richard spat out those words and stormed off to his room. I was left alone with Susan in the living room, not knowing what to do. Mary, do we really have to go without the money? She looked at me with teary eyes, but that won't work on me. Sorry, you'll have to figure it out yourselves. I avoided further conversation to keep things from getting complicated. An awkward silence filled the room. Susan seemed to be waiting for me to give in, showing no signs of leaving. After some time, Richard finally emerged from his room, holding a piece of paper.
I printed out divorce papers. If you won't help Susan financially, then let's divorce. I've already signed them. It's up to you now, Mary.
Richard was out of breath, clearly riled up.
If we divorce, you will lose this house, Mary. You think a 45-year-old divorcee can easily find a place to live?
Richard was looking down on me, confident I wouldn't go through with it. Seeing Richard's arrogance and Susan's irresponsibility, something inside me snapped. You want to divorce because I won't give Susan money? Don't be ridiculous. Enough of making a fool out of me. I snatched the divorce papers from Richard. I'll go through with the divorce. Why don't you pay Susan the $30,000? You love her so much. Maybe Richard thought I would apologize. My yelling left him frozen in surprise. Ignoring Richard, I quickly packed essentials and left the house. I had nowhere to go, but I took a chance and called Sarah. Hello? Hey, how are you? Luckily, Sarah picked up right away. Rare to get a call from you. What's up? Well, I had a big fight with Richard. If it's not too much trouble, can I stay at your place for the night? Of course! Stay as long as you like. Oh, could you make some of your buffalo chicken wings? It's been a while. Sarah loves the buffalo chicken wings I make. Thanks, I'll make a ton of them. I headed to the supermarket to buy ingredients and then drove to Sarah's apartment. After a 30-minute drive, I arrived at Sarah's place. As I started cooking in the kitchen, Sarah awkwardly approached me from behind. What did Dad say to make you consider leaving home? Not wanting to worry Sarah, I replied vaguely. Well, just some stuff. Did Mom notice something? I froze at Sarah's words. What are you talking about? Never mind. Sarah quickly looked away flustered. I had an instinct that I needed to know what Sarah was getting at. Actually, I've been thinking about divorcing Dad. He said some awful things. Do you know something about it too? The moment the word divorce left my mouth, Sarah's eyes widened. She started talking like a dam had burst. Finally, it's out. Dad is having an affair. I saw him going into a hotel with a younger woman. It made my skin crawl, and that's why I moved out. Sarah's revelation was beyond surprising. I couldn't believe what she was saying and was stunned. What? An affair? Huh? Wait, it wasn't about that? Sarah's face turned pale. She realized she had spoken impulsively. It wasn't about that, but it sounds like something I should know. Can you tell me more? I'm not going to get any more hurt at this point. Well, if Mom says it's okay, I'll talk. Sarah took a seat and started talking about Richard's infidelity. Just before I graduated, I saw Dad when I was out with friends at a pub. He was walking with a woman I didn't recognize. So I followed them and... Sarah had goosebumps on her arms. Seeing your own father's infidelity is not something anyone would want to witness. Her revulsion was understandable. Do you have any proof? Yeah, I was so disgusted and angry I took photos of Dad entering the hotel. When Sarah showed me the pictures, there was Richard arm in arm with a much younger, beautiful woman. Wow, that's really unsettling. I'm sorry I didn't catch on sooner. Sarah shook her head. Actually, I was blackmailed for money by Susan. When I refused, Richard told me to divorce him. If I have this kind of evidence, I'll be the one filing for divorce. Sarah had been keeping this from me all along. She must have been going through a lot. I felt terrible. Now that I understood why Sarah had moved out, could you send me those pictures? I have the divorce papers signed by Richard. I'll make sure to get alimony before the divorce is finalized. I'll go with you. I want to give Dad a piece of my mind one last time. Feeling empowered, knowing Sarah was on my side, I finally grasped the full picture. Turns out Richard wasn't blaming Susan for her affair because he was cheating too. The moment I realized that, my disdain for him grew exponentially. That night, we drowned our sorrows in a heap of buffalo chicken wings and a good deal of venting about Richard. Far from being upset, Sarah seemed almost pleased at the idea of Richard no longer being in our lives. Then the weekend rolled around. Sarah and I went over to where Richard was staying.
So, you have finally come back.
We returned to find our home in shambles. Richard, never one for housework, hadn't bothered to clean or cook. Half-eaten instant noodles and snack wrappers were strewn all over the place. We're back, but what a mess. How can anyone live like this? Richard was visibly annoyed by Sarah's comment.
How dare you talk to your parent like that?
Well, you won't be my parent much longer, will you? Richard seemed even more irritated at this. I have already told Sarah. I have filled out the divorce papers. All that's left is to file them.
You really think you can actually divorce me?
I do, but first, there's something I need to confirm with you, Richard. Sarah and I sat down on the sofa. The table in front of us was dirty, which only made me feel more uncomfortable.
Confirm what?
Take a look at this. I showed Richard a picture Sarah had sent me. As he looked at the screen on my phone, his face went wide.
This is,
The picture showed Richard entering a hotel with another woman, leaving no room for excuses.
That woman works for me. She wasn't feeling well and we were just taking a break. You're not going to assume this is cheating, are you?
Assume? I took the photo right before entering the hotel. She was laughing. Didn't seem sick to me. Richard tried to wriggle his way out with a lame excuse, but we weren't having it. I'll give you the divorce you want, but you will have to pay the alimony decided in court.
I can't afford to pay alimony. I have to give money to Susan too.
My disappointment in Richard, who was still prioritizing Susan, even now reached new heights. Then work hard to afford both. From now on, we'll talk through lawyers, so don't contact us again. I don't need a cheating dad. Please get out of my sight. We were just about to leave the house when we heard,
Wait, you've got it all wrong. Please wait.
Richard came chasing after us, desperate.
Think about it, Mary. If we get divorced, you're gonna lose the house, right? You would just be causing yourself trouble.
I felt not an ounce of love for Richard, who couldn't even master an apology to the very end. It's your punishment for planning to use my money on Susan and for belittling me. I don't need this house. Mom, you can stay at my apartment for a while. Leaving a tearful Richard behind, we walked out of the house. What a relief. Me too. The thought that we wouldn't have to deal with Richard and Susan anymore lifted our spirits. Eventually, I was able to finalize the divorce. Thanks to Sarah capturing those incriminating photos, I also secured a decent settlement in court. Broke and penniless, Richard could no longer provide for Susan. As a result, Susan and David were unable to get married. They didn't just stop there, they broke up their engagement after constant fights about money. Susan blamed her inability to remarry on Richard. Infatuated with Susan, Richard felt responsible and they now live together. However, due to paying me the settlement, Richard is also broke. In the end, they moved in with their parents, but I had already filled them in on the situation, so they got kicked out. People should learn not to depend on others' money and start living on their own. As for me, I decided to move back into my parents' home with Sarah. Fortunately, both of my parents are still healthy, so I used my saved caregiving funds to renovate our family home. The fully renovated house is incredibly comfortable, and both my parents and Sarah are thrilled. I plan to keep working hard to maintain this simple yet fulfilling life.
My name is Olivia. I've been married to my husband James for 3 years, and we're expecting a baby soon. But ever since I got pregnant, James has been acting a bit strange. Morning sickness has been really tough on me right from the start of my pregnancy. Instead of showing concern, James would say,
"Hey, aren't you being a bit lazy?"
without a hint of worry. I'm struggling with morning sickness. Give me a break.
Pregnancy isn't an illness, you know. What about dinner?
I can't even think about making dinner with this morning sickness.
Useless. Fine, I'll go eat out.
What about me?
If you're going to slack off, then fend for yourself.
I can't believe this. At this point, James was the one working, and I was dependent on him. That's how I felt. I used to work before getting pregnant, but I had to take a leave of absence because the morning sickness was unbearable. Luckily, my workplace was understanding and allowed me to take parental leave, which was a big relief. When James came home, he seemed to have had a few drinks and yelled,
"The master is home."
"Stop it, you're disturbing the neighbors."
Hey, I'm the one supporting you here.
I told you, I'm just taking a break because of the morning sickness.
Must be nice being a woman. Just say you have morning sickness, and you don't have to do anything. I wish I could get pregnant and take a break.
I was really angry and said, "You have no idea how hard this is for me."
Yeah, I don't. Someone who sleeps all day wouldn't understand how hard my job is.
I used to work too, you know.
But now you're a housewife.
That's not the point.
Ugh, you're annoying. You're ruining my buzz. I'm going to bed.
With that, he cut off the conversation and went to the bedroom. But the next morning, he was completely different and apologized, saying,
"I'm sorry.
Did you say those things because you were drunk?"
I had quite a bit to drink."
That's no excuse.
I didn't mean it. I was just drunk.
It still hurts to hear those things.
I'm really sorry. I mean it.
Don't do it again. This kind of thing happened a few times, but as time went on, James's behavior got worse. Especially noticeable was how he would criticize the difference in status between my family and his.
You should be grateful to my family. Our child will be the heir, after all.
What do you mean?
My prestigious family compared to your average salaryman family. There's no comparison.
Is lineage really that important these days?
You don't get it. Noble blood has its own value.
Isn't what you're doing now and how you grow more important?
That's why you're hopeless,
he said, dramatically waving his hands in a dismissive gesture. But the truth is, his family is just an average salaryman family too, and they're not even part of a big corporation. In fact, when it comes to the companies we work for, my family's is higher up. I never really thought about the social standing of our families, but it seemed to matter a lot to James. Besides, when we were both working, I actually earned more than he did. I didn't really understand what he meant by status. So you're saying that no matter how hard I work and earn, it doesn't matter because of my lineage?
That's right.
What about people who built huge companies in one generation, like Steve Jobs?
Stop it. You're just making excuses.
I think it's a valid point.
No, it's an excuse. This is why people with ordinary backgrounds are, you married this ordinary person, remember? I did you a favor by marrying you. At that, I was visibly angry, and he seemed to realize he'd gone too far and quickly left the room. He wasn't like this before I got pregnant. What happened to him? Should I get a divorce? I thought about it, but with a child on the way, I couldn't bring myself to leave him. Besides, I thought he might go back to being the man I married once the baby was born. I thought so. On the day of the delivery, he was at the hospital but got kicked out of the room by the nurse for saying things like, "It can't be that painful," and "This is taking too long. Can I go to sleep?" After that, I couldn't bring myself to see him, and he didn't meet our child until I was discharged. During that time, he sent messages like, "The nurse kicked me out. Where should I go? What about my dinner? Has the baby been born? If I can't see them, I don't need to come, right? The baby looks like me, not like you at all, LOL." That's when I seriously started considering divorce. But what held me back were my in-laws. They are wonderful people. As soon as the baby was born, they called to say, "We're so glad everything went well. How are you feeling?" "Take it easy. Do you need anything? We can send it over if it's not a bother." They've always been so kind to me, even more so than my own parents. The thought of taking their grandchild away from them made it hard to go through with the divorce. I invited them to the hospital to meet their grandchild, and they were delighted. They came, all the while concerned about my well-being. "Congratulations, Olivia. The baby is adorable." "Oh, absolutely. Our first grandchild. Thank you, Olivia." "I'm glad you could see your grandchild. By the way, where's James?" I couldn't tell them the truth about James's terrible behavior, so I said, "He's busy with work." "That man, I swear. He should take some time off for such a happy occasion." "Well, he has to work." "True. We'll need the money now more than ever. Please let us know if he does anything wrong." I wanted to tell them everything, but seeing their joyous faces as they looked at their grandchild, I couldn't bring myself to do it. "I will." Melissa, my mother-in-law, seemed to sense something was off. "Are you okay? You look tired. Is something wrong?" I felt tears coming and started to cry. "Is it related to James not being here today?" Women's intuition is sharp. I began to open up. "Actually, I've been struggling with James's behavior since I got pregnant." "Really? Don't hold back. Tell me." "He said I was lazy when I had severe morning sickness. He even said he wished he could slack off, too. I'm not slacking off." "Oh my." I told him how bad my morning sickness was. He doesn't understand anything. Calling a pregnant woman with morning sickness lazy. "Even during childbirth, he was so terrible that the nurses kicked him out. I didn't want to see him, so I didn't call him." "I see. Unbelievable. I'll give him a piece of my mind." Daniel was visibly angry, his face red. "But I'm hoping he'll go back to the way he was once the baby is born. I thought maybe it's just a case of the baby blues. So for now, please let it be." "You're very kind, Olivia." "If Olivia says so, we'll leave it for now. But if he acts up in front of us, we're taking you home. No questions asked." "That's fine with me. And if anything else happens, don't hesitate to tell us." "Exactly. Your and the baby's well-being is what matters most." My in-laws said this and gently squeezed my hand. With these two around, I can make it through. And my husband should go back to being himself. That's what I thought as I was discharged from the hospital. But he never changed. When I got home, he said, "Finally back, huh? Hogging the baby all to yourself. This is my heir, you know." "It's because of your attitude." "Oh, already in a bad mood. That's not good for the child." He was fine when my parents came to celebrate the birth, but reverted back as soon as they left. Seeing this, I knew he was doing it on purpose. About 2 weeks after giving birth, Melissa contacted me. "We'd like to come over for a baby celebration this Sunday. Are you up for it?" "I'm fine, thank you." "Don't worry about us." "How about we have lunch together?" "Oh, we couldn't impose. We'll bring lunch." "Thank you." "It's no problem. We're coming to your home after all. You should take it easy for a meal." "Melissa." "See you then." After ending the call with Melissa, I told my husband, "Melissa and the others are coming for a baby celebration this Sunday." "All right. Make sure to entertain them properly." "You're not going to help?" "I'm the man of the house. I don't need to." "I'm tired from just giving birth." "If it's that serious, you should have stayed in the hospital. You're discharged, so you're fine. You're just exaggerating." "I can't believe, like I've said, pregnancy isn't an illness. Just get everything ready." With that, he left for work. I did the bare minimum cleaning and prepared coffee, waiting for Sunday. On the day of the celebration, unfortunately, my husband had work in the morning and would join us in the afternoon. My in-laws arrived and immediately began fussing over me. "How are you feeling? You're not pushing yourself, are you?" "If you're sleep deprived, you can leave the baby with us and rest." "Thank you." Then they looked at the baby and said, "The baby was cute when born, but has gotten even cuter. The eyes are just like Olivia's. Maybe the nose is from James." Seeing them so happy made me feel good, and for the first time since the baby was born, I felt at peace. Around lunchtime, we decided to eat as the baby was asleep. Daniel brought out some appetizers and said, "Eat whatever you want. Don't worry about us. The celebration is also for the new mom, you know." "Melissa, Daniel, thank you." Just as we were enjoying our meal, my husband came home. "I'm back. Mom, Dad, welcome. It's been a while." "How have you been?" As the greetings were exchanged, my husband noticed the appetizers on the table and yelled at me. "Hey, my parents are here, and you bought this cheap stuff? How many times have I told you pregnancy isn't an illness? Stop slacking off." I was shocked. I never thought he'd say such a thing in front of my in-laws. He then turned to them and said, "Sorry, Mom and Dad, she's not very thoughtful. I'll have her make something else right away." When I looked at my in-laws, Melissa looked surprised, and Daniel was clenching his fists, looking down. My husband misunderstood their reaction as anger towards me and continued, "See? Get moving. Ever since she got pregnant, she's been like this, always claiming morning sickness and slacking off. I never thought she'd be this kind of woman." After about 5 minutes of his rant, Daniel had had enough. "Did you say the appetizers were cheap?" "Yes, I did. Sorry about that. She probably got them from the local supermarket." Unable to bear it any longer, I interjected, "Actually, Daniel bought those." "What? Stop lying." "He bought them from a department store's food section. Sorry they're not up to your standards." "You..." Realizing he was at a disadvantage, my husband's face fell apart. No. I thought Olivia bought them." "Even so, how could you say such things to a woman who just gave birth?" "I didn't raise you to be like this. But she's been slacking off." "That's not true. I've been dealing with severe morning sickness and physical limitations." "That's no big deal." Melissa chimed in. "What are you saying?" I told you I was hospitalized due to severe morning sickness when I was pregnant with you. But she didn't need to be hospitalized, so she's fine. You don't get it. Pregnancy is tough. And who do you think was carrying your child? Olivia. My husband looked flustered, his face turning various shades. I went to my room and returned with a diary and divorce papers. I would have reconsidered if you'd behaved in front of your parents. This diary contains everything you've said to me. It's enough evidence for a lawsuit. That could be fabricated. After what you did in front of us, that's unlikely. We'll support Olivia if she goes to court.
Daniel.
I can't believe you're my son. I don't want to think of him as my son anymore. Really?
Hey, Olivia, would you let us re-educate him? Maybe we messed up his upbringing in the first place. Melissa, look, if we're the ones who messed up, let us try to fix it. If it doesn't work, you can divorce him. We'll cut ties too.
Even you, Mom?
All right. James, be grateful to Daniel and Melissa. I'll wait until your re-education is complete. If there's no improvement, then we'll divorce.
Answer me!
Startled by Daniel's loud voice, James stiffened and muttered a faint, "Yes." So now we're separated. My in-laws occasionally check on me and update me on how James is doing. Apparently, they're teaching him how to cook now. It turns out James acted the way he did because he felt inferior to my income and was mocked by his colleagues. He took his boss's advice to strike while the iron is hot. Too literally. Even after hearing this, I can't forgive him. My in-laws aren't ready to forgive him either, so it looks like his re-education will continue for a while. After some time, I received a message from my husband.
Lately, I've been doing all the housework after coming home from work. When I complained about being tired, my colleagues laughed at me when I told them why. They said I'm soft and my parents are strict. So, could you tell my parents to ease up? They seem to listen to you more, and if you say it, they might forgive me.
I quietly forwarded the message to Melissa and Daniel. You are the company you keep, they say. It seems the environment was toxic for James. If he doesn't change his ways soon, it looks like we'll be divorcing before our child even gets to see their dad's face.
5 years ago, my sister-in-law, Isabella, who stole $100,000 from our family home, showed up out of nowhere. I'm moving back in with my husband and in-law, so you'll need to leave. Excuse me? There's no family home left, you know. Isabella seemed confused. Huh? So here's the backstory. I'm Rachel, just turned 30. 6 years ago, I met Owen at work, and we got married and I left my job. Owen and I decided to live in the guest house on my parents' property. The guest house is spacious and is close to Owen's workplace, so he was totally fine with the idea. I have a younger brother named Joshua. In high school, he even played in the state championship for American football, but never turned pro, or rather, couldn't. But he was pretty popular locally and among the ladies, so he got married to Isabella a year before I did, and they also lived on the family property. Isabella was stunning. She could have easily been a model. Joshua fell head over heels for her. However, after marrying Joshua, Isabella showed her true colors and was always arguing with him. And then 5 years ago, she took off with $100,000 that was stashed in Dad's room. Even though it was a full-blown crime, Dad didn't want to make a big deal, so he didn't report it to the police. Joshua was desperately searching for Isabella, but never found her. About 3 years after Isabella disappeared, Dad suddenly passed away due to an infectious disease. Then, just 2 weeks later, Mom also died from the same disease. Losing both parents so quickly, I couldn't easily accept the reality. Neither could Joshua, and we were both in a state of shock. It took us about a month to come to terms with our parents being gone. Joshua, it's just the two of us now. Why didn't you take over the house? He didn't respond. After a while, he finally said, Rachel, I'm thinking of leaving this place. And that took me by surprise. Wait, why is that? Well, my high school buddy owns a hotel by the sea and has been asking me to help him out for a while, so I'm thinking of working there. If that's what you want, Joshua, I won't object. A few days later, Joshua moved to the seaside town. After he left, I felt lonely looking at our empty family home where both my parents and Joshua used to live. Owen noticed and said, Rachel, you look lonely. Hearing that from Owen, I broke down crying and he gently hugged me. After a moment, Owen suggested, how about we rent an apartment somewhere and move? I was glad Owen offered that. Yes, let's. This place feels too big and lonely. So what do we do with this house? We can't leave it empty. Rent it or sell it? Let's sell it, but I'll inform Joshua first. All right, I'll get the process started. Thank you. I tried calling Joshua's cell to tell him about selling our family home, but his phone was off. I called the hotel he was supposed to be working at, and a friend told me he had suddenly canceled and had been unreachable ever since. Unable to contact Joshua, I was unsure what to do. In the end, I told Owen to proceed with selling the house. Owen contracted a real estate agent he knew. And to our surprise, the house sold quickly and for a great price, leaving both Joshua and me with a hefty inheritance. I wanted to tell Joshua, but I couldn't get in touch with him. 2 years passed. One day, Owen came home with a serious look on his face. A colleague at work said he saw Isabella. This colleague had attended our wedding, where he'd seen Isabella. She had been a standout beauty at the wedding, leaving a lasting impression. Where did he see her? After seeing a movie with his wife, they went to a nearby coffee shop. She was there drinking coffee alone. What was she doing? Looked like she was waiting for someone. So she had an appointment with someone then. Seems like it. But why appear now? I wonder where she's been all this time. What happened to the money she took? It's probably all gone. Should we tell Joshua about this? I think it's better we don't. It would be cruel to bring up old memories, especially when he's finally moved on. So we decided not to tell Joshua about Isabella. It's not like anything would change for Joshua if Isabella came back now, but Isabella's story didn't end there. A week after my coworker spotted Isabella, I got a surprising call from her. I didn't recognize the number on my phone, so I answered, wondering who it could be. Long time no talk, Rachel. How have you been? Her voice was upbeat, but to me, it seemed careless. I couldn't identify who it was. Who is this? Forgot my voice already? It's me, Isabella. I was so shocked that, for a moment, I couldn't find the words to respond. Finally, I spoke, my voice icy. What are you doing now? Rachel, are you mad? Well, I guess that's understandable. Isabel chuckled on the other end of the line. Where are you right now? I'm in a coffee shop near the cinema, you know, where Owen's coworker saw me. Isabella knew she had been seen. Why didn't you contact me sooner then? Well, there were some complications. By the way, Rachel, can you come over here? Right now? Yes. I had no other plans, so I decided to go. Fine, I'm coming. I quickly got ready and headed to the coffee shop where Isabella was waiting. I arrived about 30 minutes later and reunited with Isabella for the first time in 5 years. She looked as stunning as ever, even more so than before, drawing admiring glances from men around her. Once I sat down and ordered coffee, Isabella spoke bluntly. I'm moving back in with Joshua and our parents-in-law, so you better move out. What? There's no home left, you know. Upon hearing this, Isabella widened her eyes. Huh? My parents are gone. They passed away from an infectious disease 2 years ago. That's why I sold the house. Isabella clicked her tongue softly. You've got to be kidding. So you showed up because you were after the house, huh? How dare you? You stole money from my family and then disappeared. Don't think I'll let you forget that. Hearing my words, Isabella retorted, "That's not true. It was Joshua who told me to steal the money. Don't make it sound like it was only my fault." I couldn't understand what Isabella was getting at. "I don't understand what you're talking about." Then Isabella raised her voice. "That's what I'm saying. Joshua told me to steal the money, and then he said to hide it somewhere and wait." I was dumbstruck upon hearing this, and I just couldn't believe what Isabella had said. "I can't believe you, Do you have any proof?" "I do. Take a look at this." Isabella pulled a piece of paper from her bag and handed it to me. It was a bank transfer statement. The sender was Isabella, and the receiver was listed as Joshua. The amount matched what Isabella had taken off with 5 years ago. I was shaking with disbelief at the turn of events. "So you believe me now, right?" I mustered up the courage to speak. So you and Joshua planned to steal my parents' money from the beginning." "Exactly. Joshua recently said he's bored living in the countryside and wants to return to his family home." "So where's Joshua now?" "He's been living with me in an apartment nearby since last month." "What happened to the stolen money?" Isabella made a sly face and said, "We spent it all, but it's Joshua's fault. He got hooked on gambling and it disappeared in no time." Hearing that they had squandered the money my parents worked so hard to save, I burst into tears. Isabella looked at me curiously. "Why are you crying, Rachel? It's not like we stole your money." She paused, then looked as though she'd had an epiphany. "I get it. You're crying because the inheritance you were supposed to get was used by Joshua." My heart sank further at Isabella's words. "No, I'm crying because what you did to my parents is so unfair." Isabella looked flabbergasted. "What are you talking about? What's wrong with using parents' money? They earn it for their children after all." "My parents didn't work their butts off so you and Joshua could blow their savings on gambling." "I don't get what you're saying. It's all the same if the child ends up using the parents' money." "You don't have to get it. Actually, you'll never get it." As I said that, Isabella changed her tone and yelled, "Don't be rude. What about your brother? He's not working, just fooling around." Her words broke me, and I started crying uncontrollably. Then Isabella picked up her mobile phone and made a call. "Joshua, can you come here now? Your sister is saying some really strange stuff." Isabella told Joshua to come here, but from what I gathered, Joshua seemed to have declined. "Fine, never mind, I'll tell her that. And by the way, your sister is mad." Isabella hung up. "Joshua says he won't come here. Seems like he doesn't want to see you." "That makes sense. He's been lying to me all this time. If I see Joshua again, who knows what I'll do." "Wow, scary, scary." "Tell me where Joshua is now." "Fine, I'll tell you, considering I've lost my family home and I'm fine with leaving Joshua now." I felt sorry for Joshua being misled by such a heartless and frivolous woman, but still couldn't forgive him for squandering my parents' hard-earned money. The next day I went with Owen to the place where Isabella said Joshua was staying. It was a cheap apartment with shared kitchens and bathrooms. I knocked on the shaky wooden door. I heard a TV playing inside, but no one answered. Owen knocked harder. The TV went silent, as if someone inside was holding their breath. Owen pushed open the door with ease, revealing Joshua inside with untamed hair and a scruffy beard. Shockingly, Isabella was also there, lying on a grimy bed. "Joshua, long time no see. What are you doing here?" "As you can see, nothing much." "I thought you were working at a friend's hotel." "Yeah, that might have happened." "Is it true that you gambled away the family money?" Upon hearing this, Joshua suddenly turned to Isabella and yelled, "What the hell did you say?" "I only told the truth." "So what did you say?" "That you love gambling." Joshua's face turned beet red with anger. "So it sounds like I'm the only one who used the money?" "Pretty much." "Don't lie. You also bought tons of jewelry and designer bags." Joshua grabbed a nearby beer bottle and moved toward Isabella on the bed. Feeling threatened, Isabella quickly stood up and hid behind us. "Hey, come over here." Owen snatched the beer bottle from Joshua's hand. "Calm down. That's not acceptable." "And what are you saying, ignoring your own faults?" "What did you say?" "Isabella, please be quiet. You're just provoking Joshua." "Listen to me too." "What?" "I found out later that Isabella stole money. I told her to return it and she transferred it to my account. But then she used my credit card number to buy famous brands of bags and perfume, spending about $50,000. That's awful. Exactly. That's why I was working at my best friend's hotel trying to save up and repay it. But Isabella said that with my hotel salary, it would take decades to repay it all. Joshua started to cry and couldn't finish his sentence. I walked over to Joshua and comforted him by patting his back. I understand. Joshua said, his voice shaky with tears. I'm sorry, Rachel. Isabella told me that gambling would be an easy way to make money. I got carried away and ended up using all the money. Tears streamed down Joshua's face as he spoke next to me. However, Isabella looked at him with disdain. What are you talking about? You're just acting too. I'm not lying. I know it's also my fault for letting myself be swayed by what Isabella said. I believe you, Joshua. Do you have any proof that I stole the money all by myself? If so, show it. Joshua looked frustrated, but then his face lit up. Actually, I might have some evidence. No way you do. Rachel, I think my old phone has text messages from Isabella saying she took $100,000 from Dad's room, and it should have the messages where she said I should just gamble to make money. Hearing this, Isabella's tone changed. I only mentioned gambling as a hypothetical. I never thought you'd actually do it, but it still serves as evidence that you took the money without consulting anyone. Joshua, where's your old phone? Joshua looked distressed. I don't know where it is because it's an old phone. Where is your stuff then? I had planned to work at a friend's hotel, so I sent my stuff to their place, but I canceled without telling them, so they might have thrown it all away. Isabella's face showed relief. Joshua, call that friend and ask if they still have your things. I broke a promise with my best friend, so I'm hesitant, but I'll give it a try. Joshua left to make the call in the corridor, because the reception was poor inside the apartment. But after a while, Joshua returned. Looks like we're good. They kept all my stuff. I asked them to charge the old phone and forward the messages from Isabella. Isabella stood up abruptly and shouted, sobbing, I'm leaving. I'm never coming back here. You're staying right here until the messages arrive. Owen quickly moved in front of the door to block her exit. About 30 minutes later, Joshua's phone buzzed. It was a message from his friend. Joshua showed me and Owen the message, which clearly indicated that Isabella had stolen the money. When I looked at Isabella, she was burying her face in the bed and crying. It's all out now. With this evidence, I plan to report you to the police. Isabella cried out, Please forgive me, I'll work and I'll pay it all back. You took a big game, but I bet you'll just run away when the going gets tough. That's not true, I swear. Sorry, but I know you better than anyone. You can't resist buying things you want. I won't buy anything anymore, I promise. Do you really mean that? I promise. Sitting like that, are you actually sorry? Isabella was lounging on the bed, legs thrown carelessly to the side. Realizing her posture, Isabella quickly sat upright, but I continued. If you're genuinely sorry, then show it. Finally getting it, Isabella straightened up, placing her hands on her lap. I am truly sorry. I will pay back every penny, no matter what. All right. Write that down, and at the bottom put that if you don't pay back the full amount, I have the right to go to the police. Shaking visibly, Isabella nonetheless took the paper I handed her and wrote down what I'd said, signing it. Rachel, you really trust her? She'll betray us. Right now, even if we get her arrested, we won't get the money back. She'll work it off and repay us, or else she'll answer to our parents in heaven. Okay, fine, you're right. And Joshua, don't forget you also need to repay the money you spent gambling. I know. I'll work at my buddy's place. A month went by. Isabella tried to find work but was unsuccessful in the end. She ended up working as a hotel maid at a hotel owned by one of Joshua's friends. I felt relieved knowing Joshua was keeping an eye on her, so there was no worry she'd run off. 2 months passed since they started their jobs at the hotel. Joshua was a jack of all trades at the hotel and seemed to be doing well. Isabella, however, was struggling. She constantly mentioned wanting to quit, according to Joshua. Each time she did, Joshua would remind her, Would you rather work here or go to prison? Another 3 months went by. Owen and I decided to take an overnight trip and secretly visited the hotel where Joshua and Isabella were working. Shortly after we were escorted to our room, a noticeably thin hotel maid brought in the amenities. As she noticed us, she gasped, dropping the amenities. It's been a while. I'll bring new amenities right away. I've been working hard. I recognized the voice and realized the thin maid was Isabella. She had lost so much weight, her features had changed completely, and she looked like she could collapse at any moment. After Isabella left, Joshua came into our room. Rachel, if you're coming, you could have told me. Isabella got startled and dropped the amenities. Isabella looked entirely different. I couldn't even recognize her. Every night she goes to bed crying, saying how hard it is, but she has to keep working until she pays back all the money. I guess I have to repay the money I lost gambling. Joshua said, his face etched with sadness.
My name is Emily. I'm 45 and currently dieting for Thanksgiving. Why? Because last year, I accidentally stored about 7 pounds of turkey fat on my own body. If I lose 7 pounds now, I can afford to gain it back during Thanksgiving, right? What? That's not how it works? Oh well, I tried. From Thanksgiving to Christmas, there's just too much good food. I'll probably even buy myself some Valentine's chocolate soon. Oops, I'm drooling. Looks like I'm set to gain weight after this year. Anyway, today I want to share a winter memory of mine. I hope you'll listen. It happened when I was 25. I had decided to marry my boyfriend Richard, who I'd been dating for several years. I introduced him to my dad, James, and my mom, Linda. You know, the typical meet the parents situation. My parents liked Richard, and everything seemed to be going smoothly until a problem arose. My older sister, Susan, who's 2 years older than me, came home from work and was instantly captivated by Richard. It's strange, but sisters can just tell what the other is thinking. Susan had fallen for Richard at first sight. I hoped I was wrong, but Susan blushed when Richard shook her hand. She was always looking up at him when she talked. I thought it was inappropriate for her to act that way towards my boyfriend, but I guess she couldn't help it. I thought she'd eventually put a stop to it, so I ignored it. But after Richard left, Susan cornered me, looking ridiculous in just a bath towel, and said, "You should call off the wedding." She kept bad-mouthing Richard, saying he was a player and that I could do better. But she had no evidence. When I asked her why she thought he was a player, she said, "It's a woman's intuition." Susan has never had a boyfriend. How could I trust the intuition of someone with no experience in relationships? In that case, I believe in Richard's personality, which I have seen with my own eyes for several years. So I brushed off Susan's warning and didn't take it seriously. Richard started visiting my parents' house more often. He said he wanted to get along with my family, so I invited him over without a second thought. My parents were happy, and I had no reason to object to my future husband getting along with them. Everything seemed fine, but Susan was trying to build a good relationship with Richard in a different way. According to Richard, Susan would grab his arm when I wasn't around, press her chest against him, and ask, "Don't you think Emily is childish?" She even tried to show him under her skirt by pretending to trip. Richard laughed it off, saying it was so obvious it was funny. If he had taken her seriously, I would have been very upset. But Susan mistook Richard's politeness for interest and kept making advances. Initially, it was love at first sight, but the fact that Richard had a stable job in a decent company also seemed to attract her. She was not going to give up on a man who was handsome, capable, and guaranteed a stable future. My parents, who should have seen Susan's inappropriate behavior, said nothing. Actually, they've always let Susan get away with anything. To be honest, Susan has always been incompetent. If you ask her to heat up some food, she'll melt a non-microwave safe plastic plate in the microwave. She's bad at studying and sports, especially swimming. She always found excuses to skip swimming classes, like injuring her foot or having a skin rash. She's bad at studying, sports, and even household chores. To be honest, Susan isn't exactly a beauty. But my parents doted on her just because she's the eldest daughter, and instructed me to secretly support her. Yes, secretly, I shouldn't outshine her. I should make her look good. It's unfair, considering we're sisters. Well, maybe my parents felt that Susan was a poor child who can't do anything, and that's why they wanted to protect her. Ironically, I was good at almost everything. I could quickly learn and master new skills. Maybe that made me less endearing to adults. So I even managed to complete the Make Susan Look Good mission effortlessly. There was a time when I pretended to be incompetent outside the house. But after I got through puberty, I started to rebel against my parents, thinking, if I keep this up, I'll fail my exams. If I had continued to listen to my parents, I might have actually become a child who can't do anything. This rebellion made Susan somewhat resentful of me. But we were never on bad terms. We talked normally, and I even gave her advice sometimes. Despite the imbalance of my parents' affection and Susan's hostility, we were still a pretty normal family. But that balance was shattered because Richard didn't reciprocate Susan's feelings. You can't allow this marriage with Richard. The night before the wedding, Susan told our parents.
Come on, Susan, you will get married soon too,
my parents said. Yes, Susan. That's not the point. I want to get married before her. She's too young. But the wedding is tomorrow. Aren't you on my side, Mom? That's not true. I was quietly listening to this disastrous conversation in the hallway. Wait for my sister, who has no romantic experience, to get married first? If I did that, I'd grow old in no time. What on earth is Susan talking about? I thought she'd calm down after venting, but then I heard my dad say, Fine, your mom and I will skip the wedding tomorrow. Will that make you happy, Susan? What? I couldn't believe my ears. My mom agreed, practically begging Susan for forgiveness. This was beyond doting. It was more like worship. At this point, it's not at the level of doting. But Susan sighed and said, Fine, I'll settle for that. I at least want to make sure your marriage isn't recognized by the family. She really didn't want me to marry Richard, probably because she was in love with him. I couldn't believe it. Because of Susan's unrequited love, my parents were planning to skip my wedding. So the wedding day arrived. Despite it being a sunny day, I was sleep deprived. Not because I was too excited about the wedding, but because I couldn't stop thinking about the conversation between Susan and my parents. I'll never forget the smug smile on Susan's face when my parents officially told me they wouldn't attend. At the venue, I had to tell Richard and my in-laws that my family would be absent. I'm sorry, my sister opposed this marriage, so my family won't be attending, I said. I've never felt so humiliated. Not showing up to your own daughter's wedding. Even my in-laws couldn't believe it. Upon hearing my story, my in-laws fell silent for a moment. Just when I thought the mood couldn't get any heavier on this special day, my mother-in-law Karen took my hand. Soon after, my father-in-law William placed his hand on top of ours. You do have a family here, you know. Don't forget that. Let's not make today a sad one. Come on, smile. Tears filled my eyes at Karen's gentle smile and the warmth of William's hand. Hey, Emily. I'm your husband, remember? Don't say you're missing family, Richard said, patting my head gently. Don't cry, bride. Don't cry, my in-laws and Richard hurriedly said. Even as they laughed. You'll ruin your makeup. Amidst all this, Karen looked at me in the eyes and said, Emily, I know it's tough with your parents, but this is a good start to your new life. Begin your own family from now on. Karen hugged me tightly, as if to make up for my parents' absence. Richard and William joined in. Everything will be okay, just like Karen said. This is a good start to my new life. I vowed to build my own happy family, and that day, I married Richard without a hitch. Fast forward 15 years. We have one daughter and 2 sons. Our responsible and capable daughter, Patricia, is a lifesaver, taking care of our rambunctious sons, Robert and Thomas. But man, the way she yells, "Enough already!" She's just like me. Well, it's gone. Life was going smoothly. Richard's job was going well, and we'd bought a house. But then, trouble showed up. My dad, Mom, and Susan. We'd been estranged since the wedding, and hadn't given them our new address. Somehow they found us and showed up at our house. Naturally, my first words weren't, "Long time no see," but, "What are you doing here?" "We have a favor to ask Emily," said Susan. Even my parents chimed in.
Only you can help us.
What's going on? What could they possibly want after 15 years? As I hesitated, not sure if I wanted to hear more, Mom blurted out, "Give Richard to Susan." What? Even Richard, who had come to see what was going on, was stunned. Wait, what? How did we get to give Richard to Susan? I asked, my voice tinged with disbelief. Both Dad and Mom looked uncomfortable, while Susan seemed oddly smug.
Susan is still single. She's turning 42 this year.
So what? I was even more confused by Dad's words, and so was Richard.
Actually, Susan recently lost her job because her company went bankrupt.
Oh, that's tough.
I think you can understand why we're worried about Susan's future. She's your sister, after all.
I kept quiet, even though I thought, not really, while looking into my parents' eyes. What are they going to say next? I was more curious than annoyed by Dad's words, so I didn't interrupt.
Susan has always had a crush on Richard, and she's still single. You've already enjoyed your married life with Richard, right? Please let your sister have him for the rest of her life.
What? I looked at Richard, who seemed as stunned as I was, as if his soul had left his body. Ignoring our reactions, my parents pleaded, and Susan remained smug. From her demeanor, it seemed Susan was certain she'd get Richard. Well, our parents always gave her what she wanted. So maybe she's just delusional, but this is too much. As I was pondering this, Richard tugged at me. It seems that the soul has returned.
Hey, isn't this an opportunity?
You mean that?
Yeah, this is exactly like that joke you made when you were drunk.
Should we go for it? We quickly turned back to face Susan and our parents. Do you really like Richard that much? Caught off guard by my question, Susan stammered. Yes. I've always loved him. Really, really loved him. Wow, that's some strong emotion. You've loved him for 15 years, even though he's someone else's husband? Yes, it's been hard, thinking of you two together. We were doing so well. Trying to keep a straight face was hard, given Susan's confident tone, but Richard and I managed. You win, if you feel that strongly. I'll step aside. My parents were the ones surprised by my words. Really? But you love Richard too, Mom exclaimed. Well, the truth is,
I've always been in love with Susan.
Richard chimed in. Susan's face turned bright red. I knew it! I knew you loved me! You never minded when I touched you. And the way you looked at me was so loving, we're finally going to be together. I had to hold back my laughter. Hey, Richard pretending to look down and wipe away tears isn't hiding the fact that you're shaking with laughter. Hold it in. Let's spend the rest of our lives together, Richard. She must have whispered those words to her imaginary Richard countless times over the past 15 years.
I'm happy, Susan. Support me from now on.
Richard smiled. Of course.
Great. I'll quit my job then. What? Susan's flushed cheeks suddenly paled. I want to be with you every second, so I'll quit my job and stay by your side. What? I won't even go outside. I'd love it if you could accompany me to the bathroom. I'll watch you do housework all day. As Richard spoke with a grin, Susan froze, then began to panic. My parents also started to lose their composure. Wait, I'm not working either, so that's going to be a problem. Why would it be a problem? We'll be together, so what's there to fear? Even if we don't have money, we'll be happy, right? No, but we have monthly bills like insurance to pay. This isn't some fairy tale. So, you can't love me if we don't have money? That's not what I'm saying. Susan's eyes clearly dart around. I quickly said, Well, Richard, when we divorce, make sure you pay me a hefty settlement, okay? Don't worry, Susan and your parents will cover it. Richard smiled. My parents turned pale and exchanged glances. Actually, Susan, taking your sister's husband is just wrong. Yeah, Susan, that's crossing a line. The desperation they had shown earlier had vanished. My parents quickly changed their tune. What? You promised I'd get Richard. You're not acting like parents. Well, Susan, this is a different matter. Shut up! Whose side are you on? Susan became hysterical, pulling Mom's hair while Dad tried to intervene. What a sad scene. Richard and I watched for a moment before he finally spoke. Excuse me for being blunt. Susan and our parents all look at Richard. But I'm not attracted to Susan at all. I've been polite because she's Emily's sister, but I really don't like women who make advances on me. It's a turnoff, completely. And the assumption that I like Susan is also a bit. I can't deal with women who jump to conclusions. Susan and my parents were speechless. So what was that all about, Richard? Could you not call someone else's husband by his first name? Richard doesn't like Susan. We're happily married with kids. I said, restraining Susan, who approached my husband with a pale face. You tricked me. Why would you think a man you haven't heard from in 15 years would be interested in you? Are you that naive? Susan's face turned red as she held back tears. If you were so charming, maybe, but who would want an unemployed woman living off her parents? You can't even do housework, can you? With those skills, even if you got married, you'd be dumped. I hit her with the hard truth, and Richard laughed in the background. Apparently, I struck a nerve. Susan couldn't stop crying. My parents tried to comfort her, but looked troubled. So, that's that. We're not giving up Richard. Give it up, Susan. Susan broke down in tears. That's what's embarrassing about her. No growth at all. Don't contact us again. We're cutting ties. And don't expect any help from us if you're unemployed. With that, I closed the front door. When our kids asked, What happened? I said, Seems like a wild animal was making noises, probably looking for food. Robert wanted to go see, but I stopped him. We could still hear Susan's wailing from outside. 5 years later, Susan is still single. She managed to find a job but got fired for making advances on younger coworkers and married men. She's been banned from dating events for her reckless behavior. I'm pretty sure she'll stay single for the rest of her life. No doubt about it. Even my parents, who are retired, are working part-time jobs to save money for her. They probably realize they can't rely on Susan for their future care. Well, they've spoiled Susan so much, they might as well work themselves to the bone to make her realize the consequences. As for me, thanks to my hard-working husband and well-behaved kids, I don't have to worry about tuition or work. I mostly take care of the house and enjoy my days. Well, maybe if I had a job, I could offset the holiday overeating. Or maybe not. My teenage daughter, Patricia, keeps saying she wants to diet.
even though she's perfectly slim. I'm doing my best to discourage her. Save that for when you're as wide as Mom, I tell her. My sons, Robert and Thomas, have taken up dancing and even performed at a local event recently. They've won some awards and are determined to make it big, like the Jabberwockies. My in-laws visit us regularly and often join us for meals. I say in-laws here, but honestly, I consider them my real mom and dad. They've even suggested going on a resort vacation together during the kids' spring break. I hope they stay healthy and live long enough to enjoy many more days with us. Sure, there were the challenges before we got married, but ever since, it's been nothing but happiness. I finally feel like I have a real family.